What's up, lovers of the FCL, and welcome back once again to This Week in the FCL. As always, I'm the Elk. You're welcome. Here we are. We're going to talk about everything that happened this week. We're going to talk about what's going to happen next week, and we're breaking down a couple of very exciting matches. We've got a number one contender crowned. We've got King Hong versus Jinzilla, who will be the king of the monsters. And to discuss everything that does go down in that trash-talking TV man versus the Dynasty in the making, we've got a very special guest. I'm joined, of course, by my co-host, Ryan Hulk Smash Permison, Keith, the stats man, Kilduff. That's right, I'm stealing it from you, Janish. And we've got a very special guest this week. We are welcoming to discuss that very first number one contenders matchup. That's right, the Dynasty himself, David Campbell, joining us. All that and more this week in the FCL.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, David. Pleasure to meet you. And Chris, good to have you here. I did not mention our super producer, Chris Barnes.
Oh, no.
That's right, CB Radio
Shocking.
Himself. My apologies.
It's fine. I'm used to getting left behind with all the with all the hard work and the editing jobs. Yeah,
Chris,
fine.
that's so depressing. That's not the way we want to start the show. We want to be positive here. Come on.
No,
If it helps,
fine,
Chris, I was thinking of you last night. I watched Big Trouble in Little China, and every time Jack Burton started talking, I was like, CB.
Yeah.
I'm just really loving the fact that we're buying into CB as a name. I really like that.
I know, yeah. I've been called worse. So
I'm guessing that's probably some sort of British slang. But hey, I just want to say to David, the Dynasty Campbell, man, welcome so much to This Week in the FCL. We're thrilled to have you here. We'll get to it, not so happy in some cases about how your match turned out, but we'll discuss all of that. And we just want to say once again, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you very much for having me. I'm a big fan of the show, big fan of the work you guys have been doing. You're saying you're disappointed. Think how I feel. I'm absolutely gutted with myself. I've sat for the last 2 days trying to make sense of this in between the tears. So I guess we'll dissect my horrible loss, detail by detail. It'll be what a great way to spend tonight. It'll be great. Wonderful stuff.
And in advance, I apologize, of course, for all the things that I'm going to say about your opponent, because I did have a horse in this particular race. I'm sorry about that, Mr.
Andrew. Never apologize. I believe in journalistic integrity. You need to call it the way you see it, my friend. I'm not going to be one of these players who comes on here and Keith gets too hard a time off these guys. You guys need to give your opinion. And I respect that, even if it is against me, which we'll have words about behind the scenes. I need to be a face in front of the camera here, Andrew. You know how it works,
I do at that. We've got a lot of great stuff to talk about, like our match breakdowns. I'm sorry to cut you off there a second ago. Keith, why don't you go ahead and get us going?
I mean, listen, I'm just really, really excited. I think that this week was nice to get the number one contender match in and to kind of echo sort of a show of yours, Andrew, that you seem to like. It felt like Survivor Season 22-23 when we had two returning players re-enter the game.
Wow, Keith is going out of his way to make references to the dark ages of Survivor for some reason, as opposed to all the good seasons. But I do know all about those years, and yes, a very apt description. I got to appreciate that. I don't which player is Coach, which player is Ozzy?
Coach Ozzy, Boston Rob, and Russell.
Well, we know who those players are. If you're a Survivor fan, I certainly do. I think that David, the Dynasty Campbell, that's a tough one, but we love him. He's real good at what he does. I'm going to go with Ozzy. What do you think, Keith?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay, we've lost everybody. So why don't we move ahead and we can go around and say stuff if you want, boys, or we could just jump ahead and get right on into that first matchup of the week.
I think let's get into it, guys.
Let's get into it. I can't wait. Lots of great matches.
Hit it, CB. Hit it. FCL 7 is in the books, as we saw. Two returning players, as I mentioned earlier, alongside two new rookies, one of which we knew before from last season in the movie trivia Schmoedown, as we welcome Rick Hong back into the FCL, and also a gentleman who was meant to play a couple of weeks ago in David Jindoyan. Andrew, you're the man who knows how to pronounce his name. Did I say that right?
That is, as far as I know, correct. Once again, Jindoyan, wonderful fellow, very, very polite, reached out to me and said, thank you for getting his name right. And I did say Jindoyan, so I'm going to assume that is correct. And I haven't somehow screwed it up, and I'm now doing it wrong every time.
I mean, listen, it's great that David got his gig. Obviously, the Schmo pulled a few tricks a couple of weeks ago, which unfortunately meant that he had to make his debut this week. But listen, it's been great to see him in it. And promos came up. Rick is playing up this idea of being the king. David had this real sort of like strong physical vibe about him that I enjoyed. And listen, as they got straight into round one, both guys hit their first question in action adventure in terms of the escape from New York, LA actor, which was Kurt Russell. David misses his question of the round, which was the director of the 2018 Ava DuVernay movie A Wrinkle in Time. In my opinion, that's a bad miss, but listen, we can break into that in a few seconds time. They both hit the comedies question, 40-Year-Old Virgin, 2005 Judd Apatow. Rick misses the movie release dates question of The Abyss, Back to the Future 2, and then they both go 4 for 4 on the last one on fantasy, sci-fi, 1990s, horror thriller, and franchises, ending up with the Javier Bardem Salazar character in the Pirates of the Caribbean. First round ending 7-7. Chris, I want to come to you. What were your initial thoughts on Rick, David, round 1, 7-7, Ava DuVernay, and Abyss?
I think it was, to be fair, it was a good showing from both of them. Obviously, it was a movie release dates, right? Was the one that Rick missed.
Yeah.
You know, I've said it before. A lot, you know, you're not surprised when someone misses a movie release date, I don't think, unless it's Ben Bateman or Scott Mance. You know, it's a tricky question. What did you say? What was the miss from David again? Was it the Wrinkle in? No, it was the Wrinkle in Time. Yeah, that was, because that's quite a recent movie as well. So for me, that's kind of something you would think should be more in the front of your mind. But if it's not, you know, it might not be his wheelhouse of the type of movies he watches. It can be an easy miss. But for me, like I said, I always kind of judge these competitors on. I don't go into too technical, but I think if I know a question, then I feel them being in this world of movie trivia, they should know it, because I am, like I've said many times, I was going to say crap. Oh, I've said it now. So crap at remembering. Crap.
Language.
I am crap at remembering anything, like especially in like the time frames. I play along and I try and get stuff within the same time frame as these guys have got to do it. If I can remember something and they can, I think they probably should have got that, because they're playing in the FCL or the Schmoedown, whether it's the Schmoedown, and I'm just sat on my couch watching them. So that's where I'm at with it. But like I said, it may not have just been in David and Doyne's wheelhouse, the Wrinkle in Time being like a Disney thing. Maybe he might not be into that kind of stuff. And like I said, the movie release date question, like I said, unless you're Mance or Bateman, I don't really hold that against anyone for missing a release date, you know.
Ryan, I went 6 for 8. How'd you get on for round 1?
Yeah, as far as round 1 goes, I went, I think, pretty much 7 of 8, if not 8 for 8, because most of those questions I pretty much knew right off the bat. The Wrinkle in Time, I would not have missed, just so you know. The movie release date, Scott Mance. You know, the as soon as they said Back to the Future Part 2, I'm like, dude, I grew up with this trilogy. I know this stuff. 89, son, 89. Come on, how hard can it be? But apparently it was a challenge for some, and that's fine. Granted, in any match, you want to start off on the right foot, but if you miss a few in round 1, it's okay, because in rounds 2 and 3, you can make up for lost time, make up some groundwork there. So yeah, round 1, I probably would have gone 7, if not 8 for 8, because, you know, I'm just that good.
Wise words from the quote himself. David, I want to come to you for a second. How important is it getting off to a good start?
Yeah, we'll discuss it later on with the next match. It is very important to make sure that you try and at least match your opponent or get above them, especially... It's hard for these guys because they don't know how their opponents will fare in round 2 or 3. If you know that your opponent, though, can go the distance at a 5-pointer, that round 1 is crucial to make sure that you're level or ahead of them. Having said that, it is different when you're in that environment. Both these guys, it's their first match. That comes with nerves. It's different playing the game when it's asked directly to you as it is playing at home. And I don't doubt that David knows the movie A Wrinkle in Time, but that moment in his head when he just can't pull it, it's a different ballgame altogether. And I think it's actually good for some players. I found it in my first match. I missed a movie release dates question there. It actually helped me move on from that. It was a sigh of relief. I was like, okay, the first one's out of the way. We're not perfect. Let's just focus on the rest of them going forward. And I think David played a really smart game following that miss.
Well, then let's move on. Andrew, I want to come to you about round 2. Our wheel comes up. It's kind of a nice little mix here. as the weeks are developing on, we're kind of getting a more and more of a sense of how a wheel is constructed in the eyes of the producers. We're seeing Bill Murray, we're seeing Julia Roberts, a couple of actors, we're seeing Matt and Ben. We've seen a couple of these kind of combo pairings, and then a couple of directors in sort of Spike Lee. Then we're getting a few kind of peripheral categories in sports, musicians in film, Pixar. What did you make of the wheel makeup?
Well, I mean, we have a very interesting wheel here. I mean, I'd be curious, obviously, to find out from Mr. Campbell if he was willing to share, although I do understand how the competition goes. I will not ask you what slices maybe were put on the wheel by the competitors. That would tell me a lot about them. But I'm not going to ask that question because, again, I don't want to put anyone in the situation of giving anything away. I think there's a good balance to the wheel. And I think, and this is something I do have to give you credit for, Keith. We don't always get along, but you've taken down some wonderful numbers for our own internal documentation here. They spread their questions out in a particular way, and it's really becoming evident. And I think that there's a lot here for the people who are in the league to pay attention to. Look at how they're building these wheels, because you are, as Keith said, seeing a lot of the same categories coming up. You're seeing them repeat themselves. Some are more frequent than others. If you can learn these numbers, that might give you a little bit of an edge. But in this case, it's a round number 2 between Hong and Jindoyan, and both of them go in. And this is, wow, what an interesting round 2. In the end, I think for me, the big takeaway, and I'll talk about it more because I want to talk about it. I've mentioned it before, that magical number, that 6 number. Let's paraphrase a hockey reference here and say it's the 6 hole. And that's what you want to avoid in these matches, because with the 6 hole, when you're behind that at the end of round 2, as we end up seeing Rick Hong, because I think he overplayed his character a little bit. I think he wasn't as fully into it, maybe gave up a bit. But on the back of a bad round from Jindoyan, though well played, a lot of good multiple choices, he ends up in exactly that position, 6 points behind. At this point, you have to hit your 5. There is no way you can win without it. All your opponent has to do, even if you hit all your questions, they can get their 5, they can get their 2 and their 3. They can get their 2 and their 5. They can get their 3 and their 5. Other than being knocked out or being a point away, this is as bad as it gets. And I got to give a lot of credit to Jindoyan here because, as I said, that multiple choice, taking that time. He had a pretty awful round if you look at it in Spike Lee. He misses, he takes 1 point, he misses, he misses. Everything goes bad for him, and the fact that he only gave away 1 point on the steals each time saved him a lot. I think that's important.
Yeah, let's wrap round 2 in one kind of go. So it's deferred to David. He doesn't, on the first spin, gets 2010s, decides not to take it, and then on the respin gets Spike Lee. Andrew, as you said, he's only getting 1 point in the round, though. Like, I mean, it's not great, like, let's be honest with you. And there's a question here that I want to kind of come to David on. The 4th question that he gets asked is, in the film The Five Bloods, how many of them travel back? So we're looking for a number. If you don't know the number, what is the move? Is it, do I guess and then probably knowing that it's going, if I'm wrong, it's either side, or do I go to multiple choice knowing that it's going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4, and I'm potentially still giving away that 1? What would you do?
Yeah. I think he goes down to multiple choice there, because for the fact it's a modern film, so you're thinking Rick Hong's probably seen it. You know, and David's also seen it. You can see he's trying to work out, and even when they tell him the answer's wrong, he looks a bit puzzled. He's just misremembered it in his head. So for that reason, it stands to reason that you can think that Rick Hong is going to know the answer if he's not going to get it. He has to go down to multiple choice there to try and sort of sacrifice that deficit a wee bit. And that goes for even if he didn't know the answer, even if he didn't have a good guess, go down there, because then you know the ballpark you've got to play in. And if your opponent knows it, it's 1 point instead of 2, which, as we've alluded to, doing that can save you in a match, especially when you look at how he played the rest of the round.
Yeah, so obviously David only picks up 1 point in his own spin. Rick comes up, first spin comes in, musicians in film, decides not to take it, and then the second spin comes back around to the 2010s that David decided not to pick. Hits his 2 with who played Belle in Beauty and the Beast, gets the Predators movie question wrong, how many were in the 2010s. And again, this is just back to the point that I just said, David. You know, we're looking for a number. What do we do? Do we go to multiple choice? Do we chance it or not? He didn't. David got it right because he's probably thinking the same way that Rick did. It's probably 1 more or it's 1 less. Rick finishes off the round quite strong with the Octavia Spencer Hidden Figures question, and then he has to check down to multiple choice in the 2018 animated comic book movie, which I think we all felt in the moment. Like, I was screaming Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Yeah. Obviously, maybe it just didn't come to Rick in the moment, but the crazy thing about this round is that David has earned more points off Rick's spin than his own. Ryan, surely to God, you've never seen nothing like this before.
No, it's crazy, and it's a weird world we live in. But yeah, when he did that and got all those points, I was like, okay, you're starting to make a comeback here. There is some little bit of hope for you yet, because it's been a tough matchup. Been a lot of few mistakes been made here and there up to that point. But hey, you can get the points off of Rick, which, by the way, the $2 shirt with a suit on it and the crown from Party City for $5. Like, come on, man. Sorry, the royalty character is just not going to play. But aside from that, he improved in the round, which enjoying getting some steals off of Rick's category. So hey, good on him, because Rick, you may have a falsetto type singing voice, and that's great for karaoke at the bar down the street at 8:00 on a Friday night. But it doesn't cut it here in the FCL, son. You got to answer questions, not sing. You got to answer questions. You want to sing? Do it at karaoke next Friday. Other than that, interesting round.
So we move into round 3, 16-10. Obviously, to Andrew's point earlier, that 6-point gap is there. So David has to burn all 3 questions here. He's got nothing left in the bank. It's either this or it's nothing. And amazingly, manages to pull the little 2-3-5 combo. Tom Cruise, A Few Good Men. Comedies, Zac Efron in Baywatch. Spike Lee 2018 Academy Award winning for Black Klansman. Hits the 10 out of 10. Pushes it back to 2016. And then, Chris, this all falls apart for Rick completely. Gets his 2-pointer in the category of Denzel with Marky Mark being his co-star in Two Guns. And then, to me, the miss of this whole thing is his 3-pointer for the win in 80s. The 85 Bond film, the 7th and the final with Roger Moore, A View to a Kill. This is full of context. Like, surely to God, we've spoken a couple of times the last couple of weeks about having that kind of peripheral rounded knowledge of these things. Yeah. Like, you can't get away with that, surely.
No, I don't think you can. And kind of going back to what I was saying, you're in this movie trivia thing. You're in the world and you're playing these competitions. These are kind of things you should know. And to be fair, it seemed like he did know. It was between two, and he doubted himself and he doubted his own thought process, I suppose. I mean, for me, as someone who's only ever watched Goldeneye, and that's the only James Bond movie I've ever seen, probably sacrilege being an Englishman, but still, it is. But I had no idea what it was. But I don't know. He just doubted himself. Not for me. I think it was just I don't know what it was really. It was just whether it was just he character-wise he got ahead of himself and he was doing well, and he just doubted himself, didn't he? He doubted his own thought. He made the point as soon as they said the answer, he knew what it was, and he said, I knew that sort of thing. So I don't know. It's his 5-pointer that I think actually that he missed. I think it was actually a tricky one, to be fair. The Spielberg one. Yeah, it's Steven Spielberg. Everyone knows his movies, but the 2 movies that were from that year, which was
2 movies in 2011.
2011, yeah, it was Tintin and Warhorse. Yeah, they're not ones that immediately come to your head when you think of Steven Spielberg movies. You don't normally automatically go. You might go Warhorse, but you don't go Tintin, do you? It's just not one of those. It's not. So I kind of understand that miss, but yes, you're right. The Bond miss for someone in that world, I think they should probably know that, and he just needed to back himself if he actually thought that was the correct answer, rather than doubting himself and evidently getting the wrong one.
Andrew, talk to me about Hong's 5, because surely the walls are probably closing in on him. Do you know he's character, he's dropping character. Spielberg 2 movies, 2011, specific. Like, surely it just it got too much from him in the end, did it?
Well, let's get this right out of the way to start with. And I do have a question for you, Keith, if you don't mind, because I'm not seeing it here, and forgive me for not recalling directly. If you can find out for me how many JTEs were still available to Hong at the end, because this is something, if he did have them, that I'm going to harp on again and again. Use your time, especially when you know you're going for the win. When you're in that final round and those points are so desperately needed, take that extra time. Take the full 15 seconds. Think about it. Rethink about it. Ask yourself, is there any way I could be screwing this up? And take the extra time. If there was a JT left, I think there's a massive mistake. And the truth of the matter, yes.
Yeah,
and I will also say that beyond maybe needing to use that, I think Rick Hong was having a lot of fun when he was out there. I think Rick Hong was putting a lot of character forward. I like Rick Hong. I had fun watching him play, and I think that's what killed him in this matchup. I think he was too focused on having a good time. I think he was too focused on being a character for the cameras, and sometimes that can hurt you. I don't think his mind was fully in the game to take that little bit of extra time. I could be wrong. Maybe he wouldn't have gotten to it. But in the end, I think Rick Hong outplayed himself from a massive lead here, and David Jindoyan, by staying smart, by staying tight, by answering the questions when he knew, by taking his time back in round 2 with those multiple choice drops, by just staying in the match and never giving up, is what got him through and got him the win. I do think his round 3 was a little bit easier, but at the same time, I think it was makeable for Hong. And this is, forgive me, Mr. Hong, your loss as much as it is Jin Doyen's win.
David, I want to come to you because I'm interested to see who, as a competitor in the league, where you think these two guys go. Because top of mind afterwards, I feel like David maybe could be matched up against Schmo to kind of tie a bow on that sort of storyline. Whereas if Hong is here to have a bit of fun and crack and whatnot, then maybe like Devon Stewart is maybe where he needs to go next.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I think Devon and Hong could put a great match on together. That would be, are you kidding me? That's something we all want to see because we need those entertaining characters in the league. You know, that's what it's built on. You want to build these stories as well. You know, trivia is all well and good, and that's why we're here, but these guys are the heart and soul of what we're watching, and to have Hong go up against Devon Stewart, that's going to be something entertaining. Everyone's going to have a smile on their face by the end of that matchup. I think David versus Schmo is the natural way to go, and you know, I'd like David to get some revenge for my pal Sonny, you know, who got beat by Schmo weeks ago. You know, he wasn't prepared for Schmo, but David was prepared. David will be prepared for Schmo, and I think the thing with David is he had all this mental stress to go up against as well. He was meant to have a match a couple of weeks ago that didn't happen. He knew now the anticipation had built for his debut. He's called in sort of last minute for his debut as well. That can't help matters. He has less time to get himself up to the peak of the mountain. And for him to come out with a win, despite the difficulty he had with round 2, I think was very impressive. And the only way is up for David from here, I think.
Agreed with everything that you say. Ryan, I want to give you the last word on this match. How does the Elk's got something to say? I
just have to ask one thing, because I know we talked about this in our group chat. David, you weren't there, so you don't know what I'm about to do, but we talked about this. And there was a last-minute replacement with Mr. David Jindoyan coming into this matchup, which means that we missed out on the fabulous Keaton Marquis. We were all very excited to see her, but none more so than our own Ryan Purvis. And Ryan, how did you feel about the last-minute replacement in this match?
You took the words right out of my mouth.
How did I feel? Well, it was disappointing. It was. I would have liked to have seen her compete in the ring. I want to see what she can bring to the table now that she's in the FCL. But with Jindoyan coming in and replacing her, whatever it was. Hey, look, we still got an entertaining matchup, whether you enjoyed it to a certain degree or not. So, you know, hey, take what you can get, man. It's still FCL. It's still a match. It's still answering questions and still playing along at home from the comfort of your own home, ladies and gentlemen. So there's no problem here. I mean, now, Keaton, if you're watching, and I know you are, look forward to seeing your first match because I want to see you layeth the smacks down on your opponent's candy ass and walk out with a W. That's all. But other than that, I'm fine, Andrew. I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Seems like the anti-anger medication is working, guys.
It's a match is a match, man. A match is a match, but we're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
I think, listen, let's move on to the main event, which involves the man in the middle here. I'm not going to pull any punches, David.
That's fine.
I haven't pulled any punches all season, and I'm not going to start now, even though I'm a big fan of yours and really, really did want you to win. Last week,
we keep asking him to pull those punches as well, but he doesn't listen.
You do. Check us out this week on Let's Get Ready to Talk Schmoedown, the gold standard, myself and Andrew. Plug. But listen, last week when we broke down how we thought this was going to go down, I likened the scene that yourself, Nick, and Brad had to the main event of UFC 261. I think watching this match back, this felt like the main event at this weekend's UFC 262 between Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler, two wrestlers who are looking for grapple, who are looking to get that top position, who are just kind of trading blows back and forth. Getting into round 1, let's just get into it. Ends up 7-5 to Nick. I said that he needed to up his round 1. He was below the league average of 6.6, and he did. Unfortunately, you dipped under yours. You missed 3 questions. Unfortunately, you both missed the director of School of Rock. You missed out on the movie release dates question of Star Trek, and you missed the Basic Instinct question, the 92 Paul Verhoeven question. I thought you were going to hit that one. I think that one was the biggest killer of the 3. But like in the moment, what were you feeling as these questions were kind of going? Because you made a note of like you were kind of in your own head, and we were kind of thinking that maybe like if you had a manager in the moment or like a timeout or something, that might have been more beneficial for you.
Time out more than managers, because I think I managed to pull myself back mentally going into round 2, which is where a manager would be talking to you. A time out after missing my first or second question may have helped me, going forward in the round out of the two of them. But it is what I talked about. Mental state is a huge thing with these matches. And I think going in, I was listening to what was happening. I was watching your guys, watching other shows. Everyone saying David Campbell's going to beat Nick. He needs to beat Nick Harley. The title's on the line. The stakes couldn't be higher. I think it did get to me. And that's something I need to work on for the future. That is something I need to work on for the future, because going into it about 2 weeks ago, I was playing FIFA with a friend, right? And offhand, he was like, "Oh, who directed School of Rock?" And I was like, Richard Linklater. Without even thinking about it, half second comes to the match. I'm looking at it. I'm thinking, Richard Linklater. It's not coming to me. It's not coming to me. And then I'm about to ask for the repeat, and Nick does. Now, at that point, still couldn't pull it, right? It's not coming for whatever reason. And I can see that Nick doesn't have it. So that's why I didn't ask for another JTE there, because I didn't want to take the chance that I take another 10 seconds, still can't get this for whatever reason, and Nick tries, and then Nick manages to pull it in that 10 seconds. So we move on from that one. Movie release dates, like you say, I knew when Raiders of the Lost Ark came out, but I was like, I knew the sequel had to be 3 or 4 years later, roughly, and I just was off by a year. That's what happened with that one. And then what happened was, because I was in my own head so much, right, I'm thinking, all right, okay, I hear Sharon Stone, but I hear Michael Douglas first. And my brain is like Fatal Attraction. And I'm saying to my brain, it's not Fatal Attraction. But my brain won't stop screaming Fatal Attraction. And it won't let me think of Basic Instinct. So I knew by that point, I just had to get the break in. And that's why I didn't ask for a repeat on that question either. Because preparing for this match with Nick, it's clear that me and Nick, the spoiler, have no love lost for each other. But I respect him as a player. I seen what he did against the spoiler, went perfect in round 2 and 3. I knew he was capable of that. And I knew it would come down to my 5. So I knew I had to save those repeats for my 5-pointer. So I was willing to take the deficit in round 1 there and save it for that moment, rather than waste them all on the chance that I maybe would have pulled Basic Instinct.
Ryan, I want to come to you. There's a really interesting point there that David's kind of brought up, which is this idea of holding your JT even though you're about to miss a question, and not look to give your opponent that extra time either. I think that's a really, really interesting point, and I'd love to get your view on that.
Yeah, if you're going to use your JTs, it's okay to maybe use one during the course of round 1, but you want to try to save as many of them as you can for rounds 2 and 3, because rounds 2 and 3 can, in a way, make you or break you, respectively. So yeah, round 1 was, we'll admit, David, you had a tough day at the office.
I had a tough day. Yeah.
You had a very tough day at the office. It was long. It was exhausting. You didn't get the company lunch that you were promised. You didn't get the bonus check when you were walking out, when you were supposed to get, and have that title around your waist or your shoulder, however you want to hold the belt, I don't care. But it's like, yeah, man, round 1 was tough. It was like, dude, these questions, I want to give you the answers. I want to like telepathically send them to you, but I can't do it. But other than that, yeah, use your JTs in round 1 if you can. You can use one of them, but try to save as many of them as you can, if not 2 of them, for rounds 2 and 3, because rounds 2 and 3 are even more important than round 1, because as we all know, round 1 is just a warm up.
Yeah.
Andrew, just to finish out on round 1, I got about 4 out of 8 on this. I felt like for the number 1 contender match that they really amped up the question level. Did you get that feeling also watching live?
I thought it was a good, solid round all the way through. Certainly, I am in a similar boat. I won't claim to be the greatest at movie trivia in the world. I know I would not have gone perfect in this round. Maybe, and David, forgive me, because I think you played gamely, and I think the strategy you just outlined is very impressive. I love that you were thinking that deep about your opponent's position, but I might have outscored you by a point or 2 by the end of this round. Again, the trouble categories for me would have been things like people have trouble with movie release dates. I'm terrible at. Even if I was born a few years before all the Indiana Jones movies were the biggest things in the world, and I couldn't tell you what year most of them came out. I've seen them 100 times a piece. Couldn't tell you what year they came out. So that's going to happen. But I do love that, David, you were thinking about the position that you're in. I do understand that feeling of being under the lights. I can harken back to my own self saying licorice and honeysuckle when it's supposed to be licorice and cherries would have kept me alive playing against a pretty great competitor. And you just get a little bit in your own head when you're up there. But you were clearly thinking separately. I think you played a good defensive game. I think I agree with you that if you are certain, if you're absolutely certain your opponent is not faking, they're not bluffing you, then that's a great move. Don't give them any extra time. If you're not going to make it, at least make sure they don't make it with you. I think that's smart. Well played round by both, and the questions were a little bit tougher. I know, David, you would have loved to come out with a couple more points, get that 7, maybe even stretch towards that perfect round if you could. But you handle yourself well and come out with just a small gap. All that you need is a miss in round 2. This is what you need to do. If you're going to fall behind, and it's going to happen in some of your matches, just make sure you take the time you need, you play your strategy smart, and you get every point that you can. Because the closer you are in round 2, the less questions your opponent has to miss, the less steals you have to get at any given point in the match. Whether you think round 1, 2, or 3 is the most important, any point you can get is a good point. Do what you need to do to get it, and don't let yourself get too in your head. Just take your time, know what you know, and if you don't get it, don't let that make you mad about the next one.
Yeah.
Move on.
Wise words again by Andrew. It's amazing stuff. Really loving this conversation, guys. Chris, I want you to put yourself into this son of a bitch Harley's shoes at the end of round 1. You're up 7-5. Wheel comes up. We're seeing Jack Nicholson, Jim Carrey, Kubrick, PTA, Tarantino, time travel, Wizarding World. Do you go first or do you defer, and why? I
think for myself, with the lead that you've got, I would go first. I wouldn't defer because Harley deferred, right? And I would not. I think go in, ace this round. If I had my own confidence in myself to go and win, I would be ace this round and make that gap even more bigger so the opponent can just look at the scores and go, crap, I have got to get all these questions right to even be anywhere close, sort of thing. Just put the pressure on them.
So obviously Harley defers to you, David. You spin, you get spinner's choice, Wizarding World. You get asked for 3 actors in what movie did Michael Gambon take over. But I want to come to our resident Harry Potter expert, Mr. Andrew the Elk Kelk. You must have loved this round with your experience in your Harry Potter match against Robert Parker.
Absolutely loved this round. As you know, I wrote Inner Geekdom questions for the movie Trivia Face-Off. And in addition, I did compete in a last-minute sort of match. I was pulled in. I didn't know why they wanted me, but I did my studying. I worked hard, and I was real proud of the way I came out of it. I got to say, this round was a pleasure to watch. I don't think that these questions were at all too easy. They're definitely of the caliber we're expecting in a round number 2. And Mr. Campbell, you handled it fantastically. Not a miss insight. Great and well done. And yeah, I mean, I love this second round in general. Right when you were just talking, Keith, about the wheel, when you were naming all of those categories, you've heard me say it before. I think deferring and putting the pressure on your opponent, learning what you need to do, or going ahead, these are very important strategic decisions. And usually I want to go ahead, put the pressure on my opponent, know where I'm at, know what I have to do. This might be the one wheel, as you described it, that I would say, go for it. Let my opponent spin first. Let Nick Harley, if I were in there instead of you, David, and God knows I wouldn't be. You're much better at this than I am, I'm sure. I would have let him spin this wheel first because there's one category on that wheel I don't like. Everything else, I know I can take steals from him. I know I can put the pressure on, and I know I can make him feel like he's having an awful round 2. And the truth is there's some psychological warfare there. If you can make your opponent feel like you're taking him out behind the woodshed and whooping them, that you're in charge of this, that there's nothing they can do to come back, that can be a real motivator for them to screw up. That can make them second guess themselves. I say here, I love this round. I do. I love this wheel. I love this round. And I love the way you played it, David.
I think it's about having a modicum of control, though. So I get why Nick deferred, because if he can see what I'm doing, it then gives him the opportunity. If he's on the fence about checking down to multiple choice for one of 2, he can then make that decision and know I can still go ahead into the 3rd round, checking down to multiple choice and getting it with the 1 point, rather than taking a risk, going for the 2 and missing, you know. You want that. I personally think that control is a good thing, but I get the psychological strategy of going the other way.
You are absolutely speaking my language, Mr. Campbell. That is my normal rationale 100%. The only reason I say change is because I think if you're a competitor and you look at a wheel and you can say to yourself, 90% of this is something I'm really good at. 90% of this I can steal from him. I can get all the answers if they give it, if it comes to me. I'm not going to give them any information, and I want them to have a middling round where I get a good solid steal, because that's all it's going to take to rattle that opponent. If that wheel were 50% of categories that I don't like so much, every single time I'm spinning first.
So, David, you obviously get the little 1-2 shot where Nick spins opponents. And to the points that we've just been making, what you need him to do now, you need him to bleed.
Yeah.
You need to cut him open twice. And you need to make sure that he drops 2 points here. You give him Kubrick. If you don't mind, why did you choose Kubrick?
I looked at Kubrick and thought, out of all the competitors in this league, Kubrick's the one who was making movies in his prime before they were born. You know, it's not something I think that a lot of people have a sort of expertise in, you know, so I was thinking that was my strategy. And going back to the Cooper Barnes match, I gave Cooper Barnes a broad category, thinking that would have worked. It didn't work. He only checked a multiple choice once, when I was wanting more from that one. So this time I went for a specific category that, looking at Nick's back catalogue as much as I can and doing as much research as I could, I thought out of all of those categories that are on there, Kubrick would have been his weakest one. And Nick said it to me as well. If he had the opportunity, he was going to give me Kubrick. You know, so I appreciated that he was thinking on the same wavelength as me with regards to it. As it turns out, though, Nick Harley is just a really good competitor who, despite what he says about hating movies, clearly does his studying and clearly knows what he's doing.
It's mad. So obviously, listen, you've given him Kubrick. He had to take it on the chin, and he goes 7 of 8. Goes down to multiple choice in the first one. The Dr. William character in Eyes Wide Shut, TC, legend. And then goes 2-2-2, Peter Sellers in Dr. Love Strange, the first Kubrick movie in 1953, and then 2 movies in the 1970s, and he chooses Clockwork Orange. He's up 14-13. Ryan, I want to come to you. You have tried to bleed and counter-bleed and wound your opponent to try and get back level or even ahead, and you're still down by 1. What's the feeling in your eyes moving into round 3?
I would say, my opponent is clearly, thought my opponent's choice to him was going to work. It didn't. So clearly this guy knows more than he's saying. He's not just, some dude who wears a black leather jacket and a pair of shades like everyone else in the MTS. So clearly you know more than you're saying, because your persona is just irritating to no end. But he knows more than we think, and that's a dangerous thing. It's a very dangerous thing. So yeah, he did very well in round 2. Coming into round 3, it's do or die time. If I were in your shoes, Mr. David, the Dynasty Campbell. So you gotta this is it, man. You gotta land that one. You gotta land a punch. You gotta be, in this case, gotta be like Ivan Drago. If he dies, he dies. So just destroy this dude by any means necessary. I don't care. Just do it. But yes, round 3 was a challenge. Round 2 was tough. But yeah, it's do or die time. That is my mindset going into the course of round 3, Mr. David Campbell.
So listen, we're going to move into round 3, and much like Oliver and Chandler this weekend, this really is getting into the championship rounds. Again, last week when we broke this down, we made the comment that both you guys hadn't hit a 5-pointer, and one of you was going to have to do this to get the win. You counter with your 2 money, the biopics, Moneyball question. Dave Harley goes back up with comedies, Leslie Mann, John Cena with blockers. You counter again with your 3, director of Collateral, Miami Vice, Michael Mann. He counters again with his 3, Spielberg, the Toodles character in Hook. And then we get down to the 5s where we thought this was going to end up. Dave, your 5 in the 90s, Oliver Stone, 2 movies, name one. Hit a couple of repeats just to kind of set yourself, and then you throw out JFK as an answer. How confident were you that you were correct, honestly?
JFK was my instinct as soon as the question was asked. But what happens to you is your head starts throwing every other Oliver Stone movie into the mix for you to wrestle with, so that's why I use the repeats. But the way that I study, I had a sort of visualization that I could see JFK next to brackets 1991. I could see that in my head, and I was fairly confident in it. Wasn't 100% sure, which is why I gave the wee caveat. It's this a wee bit of character work there. I was like, if this is it, blah, 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 ramp up the tension. Brad was calling it like a golf commentator anyway, so the tension was already sky high. I was like, let's just ramp up the tension a bit more here. I get it. And then they say that is correct. And you could see my relief because it's like you're talking about. I knew I had to hit the 5. Against this Nick Harley, who is a good player, I knew I would have to do it. And I'm happy that I did because after round 1, I was doubting myself. You know, you get in that place, you're just like, am I as good as I think I am? I hit the 5-pointer. I know what I know. I know that I'm good. And win, lose, or draw, I pushed Nick Harley to the limit and I forced him to answer his 5. And I forced Nick Harley to beat me rather than me losing to myself.
So yeah, we get to Harley's 5. Spike Lee, Mars Blackman in what 86 movie does a couple of repeats just to settle himself down, and then pops out the answer. She's got to have it. I come back to you, David, obviously because you're the guy in the moment. Did you know that he had got it, or were you waiting for Brad as well to decide who was your winner?
I was waiting. You can see I'd turned around. I wasn't really listening to the question at that point. I was just like praying to the universe, to every god imaginable under the sun. I was like, please just let him miss it. And I could tell from Nick's face that he was in a similar position to me, that he was somewhat confident in it. He didn't use all 3 repeats that kind of gave it away for me. I don't think he used all 3. But the thing is, I couldn't remember what my music sounded like. So when it started to play for a brief second, I was like, is that my music? And then he's like, Nick. I was like, no, damn it. So I had the euphoria of possible victory, followed by the crashing down of devastating defeat in that moment. But fair play to Nick. He does work for Den of Geek. He said that he got that answer because he had to review the television Netflix adaptation for his job, which I was like, what are the odds with this guy who's going around saying he prefers TV? I was like, that story just writes itself. But like I said, me and Nick, the spoiler and the Dynasty are never going to be friends in this league. I want to see him again. But in terms of gameplay, I respect the hell out of Nick Harley. And I think we're going to talk about it in a bit. People have got their hands full with him in that title match because he is a man who's out to spoil everything in this league.
Ugh.
Andrew, I want to come to you. You were the only one of the 4 of us that had Nick Harley. And listen, I'm gonna
traitor.
I'm going to do something that I didn't think I'd do, and I'm going to pay Nick Harley a couple of compliments because he's racked up 24 points. He's had to go back-to-back matches where he's been given opponent's choice in round 2. He's come through them all. He's hit a tough 5. He's, taken everything that David had to blow on the chin, and he is rightfully in that title fight in June. So listen, the floor is yours. Please wax lyrical about this guy, in your opinion.
Well, Keith, thank you so much for recognizing, as always, what everybody always recognizes about the Elk. That's right. I knew what I was talking about. I called it correctly. David Campbell, my apologies to you because you put on a hell of a match. You were game. You were there for every question. Obviously, we already talked about it. You had a great strategy going for you. And you went 2, 3, 5 in your final round. You did everything you possibly could, although I guess you're kicking yourself in the butt by round 3 that you didn't take that extra multiple choice in round 1 because that one point could have pushed you into sudden death overtime. I don't know for sure if that's what you're thinking, but I'm guessing it crossed your mind. Yeah. And in the end, Nick Harley does come out with the victory. And if you thought I was talking out of my butt or just picking somebody for the sake of doing it, look at what this man has done. You heard it. Opponent's choice multiple times. Everyone who's come up against him has put up a fight. He knows what he knows. He's a hell of a competitor. And anybody stepping into that number 1 contenders match against Nick Harley and thinking they're going to have an easy time of it, what have you been watching? I would love to see a rematch between Nick Harley, the spoiler, one of the best working in the movie trivia game right now as a heel. He's really doing an amazing job, and I would love to see you potentially go up against him for that title because I do want to see him take that victory. Mm-hmm. I called it, and the reason I called it is because I can see the talent and the drive that Nick Harley has. He pulled it out here, admittedly, against the stiffest of competition in you, the Dynasty, Mr. David Campbell. I think he deserved this win, and I think anybody who wants to call someone a traitor for picking Nick Harley, once again, just look at what he's done. Ryan, I'm looking at you with this one. He won that match. He deserved to win that match, and he did the work to win that match. And I will not hear anything otherwise from anyone except maybe our current guest on the show, because you know me, I do like to
listen, Andrew. Me and Nick talked a lot about respect heading into this match, and he still might have contempt for the fans. I don't know. I don't read his diary every day. We're not that close. I know I have respect for Nick, and I know Nick has respect for me. I also, though I can't stand the spoiler, hope he wins that belt, because I don't like the way that I feel right now. I don't like to lose. I might be a nice guy, but I'm not anyone's pushover. I'm not going to be anyone's punching bag. The next time I step into the movie Trivia Arena, you bet your ass you're going to see the best David Campbell you've seen so far, and that should scare people. That should scare people. And it should scare Nick Harley that even if he wins that title, which I think he will because he is good, the other side of the coin in the FCL is coming back to flip it the other way. You can guarantee that.
And what a rematch it would be, absolutely. Gosh, I would love to see that matchup. I would love to see him win and see you come down against him, Mr. Campbell. And I will not take anything away from your game. Sometimes that's the way we do things, but you definitely fought for it here. And, hey, Nick Harley took the win, but that's not the end for either one of you. I think you both really won this match by showing a lot to the fans of the FCL, to us. I love what you did, and I do wonder how many times you're going to go back and think about that multiple choice in round one. That JT in round one.
Do you want to see my walls? I can show you the walls. It's Richard Linklater written in pen everywhere around the room. Like a crazy person. That's what's happened. That's how much I'm thinking about it, Andrew. I've been thinking about this for days. I've been thinking about it for the rest of my life. God damn it. It's
like Charlie Day on that sitcom with all those strings attached, all those notes.
It's all connected. No, I'm not that far. I'm not Furtado. I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything.
Thank God.
I'm not going to blame PLD.
No, you're more sane than he is. So.
The questions were fantastic. No one should blame PLD. The man's a saint. All right, I just want to say that because he has enough of a hard time.
So there's no red robe coming out the closet then David. Like Furtado.
Oh boy.
Ryan, I think we need to bookend this section. So listen, I'm going to let you have the last word on this match. Say something nice about Harley, because ultimately, like, the guy played a hell of a game, and he's rightfully in that title fight in June.
Sure, but what if I don't want to? What if I don't want to say anything nice about Nick Harley? What if I don't care? No, I'm kidding. Listen, I'll put my anger and frustration about how Campbell should have won this match aside for a moment. Just a moment. Nick Harley, you're a TV guy, works in a TV world. You write for Den, a freaking geek, and you write articles all day. So it's like you have all the answers in your head. It's almost like cheating. But you know what, pal? I'll give you this. It was a hard-fought match. You earned it. You got the victory. You're moving on. You're one half of the number one contender for that title match. Fine. Go ahead, have your party, have your little soiree with Vince Vaughn, Owen Wilson, if he's still doing crashing weddings, and have fun. Have fun for the minute. Just go ahead and do it, because once the sun sets and the dust settles and the rematch happens, because Campbell, you're going to get that match. When it does happen, and we actually crown a real people's champion like David Campbell, then the world will be back. Then we will see the light. But in the meantime, Nick Harley, congratulations on this win. You earned it. You did it. That was a hard-fought victory. Those 5 pointers at the end between you, Campbell, and between Nick. Tough questions. Really tough questions. I'm not going to lie. Tough questions. But at the end of the day, you got the W. You're in victory lane. You're celebrating with Mellow Yellow and Cole Trickle and all his friends with Tom Cruise and Michael Rooker, all that stuff. Speaking of 90s films, there you go. So there's that. But, yeah, no, look. Great match, 100%. Round 3 had us on the edge of our proverbial seats, David. We were on the edge of our seats, including yourself, I'm sure, in that $5,000 chair you're currently sitting in. Yeah. So, but yeah, congrats, Nick, and congratulations, David Campbell, because we know you're going to be back with a vengeance, and not just like the film in 1995, Die Hard with a Vengeance. You are going to deliver it times 1,000. You think Simon Says was tough to play out in the streets of New York? When David Campbell comes to play, son, it's called David Says. David Says, and your winner is David Dynasty Campbell. I am the champion. So there you go. Granted, that's a long sentence, David, but it's true.
It's true. Listen, in my humble opinion, me and Nick put on the best match so far in the FCL.
I'll give you
it's
that.
It's a call to the rest of the league. Top it. You know what I mean? And then when you do, I'll be there waiting.
I mean, you lost a close one with a total of only 4 points left on the table. Nobody can say that the two of you didn't put on an absolute clinic.
Mm-hmm. Guys, I think we've...
Great ratings that day.
Guys, I think, listen, we've broke down everything that happened this week on the FCL. So listen, let's take a look at next week in the FCL.
So next week in the FCL, we got 2 more incredible matches coming your way, and one of them is going to kick things off. We got Vanessa Fitzsimmons going up against Kofi Outlaw, which is sure to be a great match within itself. And also we got the reality star, the guy who got a rose at the end, just celebrated for 20 years when he was on the show like 15 years ago, whatever it was. Jared Hybon is going up against Jared Batolia. Thank you. Batolia. And that is going to be a heck of a match itself. Once again, both matches are going to be fantastic. Looking forward to seeing what each of these competitors are going to bring to their characters, bring into the ring, see their trivia knowledge. We've seen Vanessa has done quite well for herself in the singles division. Kofi Outlaw is no slouch either. He's done well. Jared Hybon, sure, you got a rose 10 years ago and people actually cared about the show. And you've done well in Inner Geekdom and you've done well in other matches. But in this case, I think Jared Batolia is going to give you a run for your money. So we'll see how it shakes out. But I want to go to our guest, the Dynasty, who will be the future world heavyweight champion of the FCL and is going to establish a wonderful dynasty filled with great people such as myself, Keith, and Chris, maybe not so much Andrew. But David Campbell, I got to ask you, how do you feel with these 2 matches and who do you see coming out on top?
They're both really interesting, I think. Jared played the very first match of the FCL against Abby Corinne. He came out of that one looking good. You know, he looked quite confident. He's openly said he doesn't study, which I think if he's going to beat Batoglia, that has to change. I don't know the preparation he's doing behind the scenes, but Gerald looked an absolute beast in the match that he won against Full Metal Frost, which is another fantastic name. I would probably give the edge to Gerald for that one, unless Jared has decided that he really wants to make a run. That would be my thinking there. In terms of the other match, I think both these guys are fantastic. The only thing I'd say is that Vanessa was an absolute machine in her match. She was an absolute machine. She has that experience. She is someone to be feared. Not taking anything away from Kofi, but he was up against a man who didn't know which person he was on that day. So it's hard to say. You know, it's hard to really balance it out to see how can he fare against an opponent of this caliber. I think this will be a real true test for Kofi because of Vanessa's experience and because of how well she performed in that first match, though. I'd probably give her the edge in that one.
Boy, the Dynasty speaks his mind, and we absolutely appreciate it. So thank you for sharing those thoughts, good sir. Andrew, as much as I don't want to go to you because of how much you love that snot-nosed punk named Nick Harley, I'm going to ask you anyway. How do you feel about these 2 matches, and who do you think is going to be the victor in each respective matchup themselves?
Well, this will surprise everybody out there. I don't have much of a hot take on this one, and I agree 100% with Mr. David Campbell. I think he's spot on when he's talking about these matches. Hybon has always struck me as a competitor, as decent. He has some knowledge, but as one of those people who, as David said, maybe doesn't study so much, maybe doesn't think that winning these matches is the most important thing. The hunger is there for Batolia, and I think he's going to take Hybon out. And as a side note, if I could see Batolia and Hybon competing in Hybon's sport of The Bachelor, I want to see what Batolia will do at that rose ceremony. So let's get that one going anytime. Fitzsimmons versus Outlaw. Again, this is a good match. This is going to tell us who's going to be facing off against Nick Harley. And he is coming off of an impressive performance. No matter what you think of him, these 2 going into this matchup have to be thinking about how well he played against a great competitor like Mr. Campbell here, how well he's going to play against them, and how well they have to play back. But Keith and I, who don't always agree, just like me and you, Ryan, we talked about this when we guested on the Gold Standard, the Let's Get Ready Network. Once again, pluggy. And who did we say was going to be the best possible person to put in this #1 contenders match? Who was a great fit, a great face for the other side of the table, a person who people want to cheer for, who people want to see succeed. And we both said that Vanessa Fitzsimmons was high on our list of choices. I think both of these choices are great. I think they're both game competitors, and they're going to put a lot into it. And one of them may just be able to get into that matchup to face off against Nick Harley, and maybe, and I apologize in advance, Mr. Campbell, do what you could not do this week and take that victory, get that title. One of these could be your first champion. I think Vanessa and Kofi are great choices, but again, I'm with Mr. Campbell on this one. I gotta go Vanessa Fitzsimmons.
Well said. Well said. And we're going to go to the numbers, man. The man who knows one too many things about every single competitor that's probably ever lived, because he's just that smart. And he wears a $5,000 suit jacket every single time he can on camera, looking styling and profiling. Keith, got to go to you, brother. What's going to happen in these 2 matchups, in your opinion?
I mean, it's another great week. You know, I've made a Survivor reference earlier in the show. I think I'm going to make another one. This is kind of like a Survivor Season 36, Edge of Extinction, with 4 returning players this week. But listen, undercard, Habon, Batolia. I thought Batolia was going to be a strong contender to be in the other side of the bracket on the other number 1 contender match. Obviously, I was wrong for the first time in the FCL career. Listen, I got to take that one on the chin. I think he's going to take this one. Personally, I think, listen, going back to the stats in the same way that we broke down how David and Nick was going to go, 6.6 is still the average of round 1. Batolia hit a perfect round in his first game. I think he's going to back that up with another strong performance in round 1 and round 2. And then it's just a matter of how far Habon's knowledge reaches. But I do have Gerard winning the undercard. For the other side of the bracket, number 1 contender, Fitzsimmons and Outlaw. I think this is really interesting in the sense that Vanessa has been more tested, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Kofi doesn't have it. I think it's very hard to play somebody who's in character, who doesn't know what he is, who he is. Like he's like James McAvoy in Split, is what he was half doing during that match most of the time. But I think that Vanessa has played against the best person in the FCL with a negative record in Tom Chattelbash. I think he is unbelievable, and I think he is a guy to look out for. So on the basis that she is battle hardened, having faced him, I fancy her to take the W and face Nick Harley in June.
Oh.
Great reference to the movie known as Split. Really good movie with James McAvoy. Very versatile actor, by the way. Great job, James. We love you, buddy. We know you're watching at home. So they normally tell us, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, but we're going to go to him anyway. Chris, CB, whatever your nickname is this week, and maybe something else next week. Who knows? CB, the wizard behind the curtain. I'm just curious. Any thoughts on these 2 matches? Because quite frankly, we're talking about Fitzsimmons a storm here. I think Fitzsimmons is going to walk away with this. Because Vanessa, you're a great person, whether you're in the ring or outside of the ring. You're fantastical. But Chris, we'll go to you last because you're pulling the strings. AK, you're the producer. So Chris, what do you have on this one?
I have to echo most of what everyone else has said. I agree with most things that have been said. As far as Vanessa, for me, she has to be the favourite going into this match. Kofi, yes, he was good, but as David said, how good, when he's not playing someone like Devon Stewart, who's all character and not even thinking about what he's answering when he's answering a question, how is he really going to face against someone who's had a match like she did in her debut match? So for me, I was quite surprised, Devon. I think the names on most of our lips coming out who could be in this match, like Vanessa was definitely one of them, but then obviously there was a Robert Matano and obviously Gerald as well. So yeah, I was surprised to see Kofi's name out there, but he won his match. He played a good match. Let's see how he goes. But for me, Vanessa's going to take this one. I can't see it going any other way. Habon Batolia, it could go either way, but like you said, you're all right. Gerard, so I told you this was going to be hard on that show. Gerald and Gerard. Jared, like he said, he doesn't really study. It's all base knowledge of him. It's what knowledge he's just got from just casually watching movies. And he obviously he's got a great memory to remember as much as he does, because I couldn't go in and play a match like he did in his opening match against Abby Corinne and pull out a victory. But Gerald, he was just cool and a machine. He was a machine, wasn't he? He didn't rattle him. We had Imon throwing challenges at him in his very first match.
Yeah.
It didn't sway him, whatever. He just sat there, took it on the chin, and just answered them questions and got that win. And he for me, possibly he deserved to be in the main event of this show, but he's not. He's up against Jared. Let's see how they get on.
Good points. Very good, Chris, even though you have trouble pronouncing 2 gentlemen's first names. But
they're very close. They're very close.
I know, it's sad, isn't it? It's sad that we make things so hard for you on this program. But
when that challenge from Gerald went out to Jared, I did say this is going to be a nightmare when that match actually happens. And I've got to try and say both their names in a sentence together. It's going to be impossible for me, but still, we got it. This is the reason why I'm normally behind the curtain.
Yeah, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. But yeah, no, it's going to be great. We look forward to talking about these matchups. Both of these matches are going to be interesting, if not intriguing. But at the end of the day, as Kevin Bacon said in A Few Good Men, it's going to be entertaining. So, with that being said, we look forward to talking about all that stuff next week on This Week in the FCL. What's his name? Andrew, take us out.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure once again, fans, to have you here on This Week in the FCL. We've got some great hosts like my friends Ryan and Keith and CB himself, Chris Barnes, making us all look good. We've got a wonderful guest, the Dynasty, David Campbell. Thank you, Mr. Campbell, for joining us this evening. And let's go ahead and go round the horn like we always do. David, please, I know the fans are going to want to see a whole lot more of you, so tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at David Campbell _5 on Twitter and other platforms like Instagram. I'm also I've made a feature film, 10 Reasons Not to Make a Movie. It should be in film festivals near the end of this year. So if you want to check that out, you can find it on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook also.
Absolutely amazing. And thank you again, Mr. Campbell. We look forward to further conversations with you and in seeing a whole lot more of you in the FCL and potentially even the movie trivia Schmoedown. Belts on your shoulders, around your waist. We don't care. You're a great competitor, a wonderful guest, and we thank you again. Keith, let everybody know where you're at.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at KCulduffMedia, and also check me out on the Opening Pair podcast YouTube channel. Last night, myself and Kyle Gavin broke down this weekend's UFC 262 card, so that's why I was full of references. Ryan, tell them where you can find you on all the things.
Yeah, UFC, that doesn't compute because I don't sports. But what I do is entertain the millions and millions of people out there. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RyanRPM5. Check out our YouTube channel. You see it behind me. It's called Nerd Culture. We do nerdy videos about movies, TV series, anime, comic books. Anything your nerdy heart desires, we deliver it to you each and every week. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at It's Nerd Culture. New videos being posted every week. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. And we'll see you next time. Chris, anything you want to plug, even though you're some dude behind a weird-looking curtain? But go ahead, plug yourself.
Well, you can find me behind the weird curtain of Twitter at ChrisBarnes_UK and on Instagram at ChrisBarnes_UK, or tweeting normally from This Week FCL. So that's it. Take us out, Andrew.
No problem. Chris Barnes, thank you as always. Ryan, Keith, David, it's been a pleasure speaking to each and every one of you. And to continue those references from Keith, it is the end of the show. We're sending it off to the edge of extinction. But like one lucky competitor who wins that challenge, we will be back once again next week to talk to you a little bit more about it. And like the real season 36 of Survivor, I'm a hero. He's a hero healer. He's a hustler. We're going to be here. You're going to join us. And we're going to have a lot of great fun talking about next week on This Week in the FCL.